Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience of SmithWeekly, including Tim A., Gordon S., and Andy J. On the program today is a new guest of a returning company. Mr. James Hynes is here with us. James is Executive Chairman of Core Mining, a California-focused project developer and explorer advancing the Imperial Gold Project and also the Long Valley Gold Project in California, United States. The company is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol KORE, and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol KOREF. Mr. Hynes, thanks for coming on the show. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, Andrew. Thank you for having me today.
Well, Jim, good to chat. Sentiment in the gold market has improved as of late. The equities sentiment has also improved. What are your thoughts on investor appetite for gold equities here, and also your thoughts on overall gold price environment?
Yeah, that's a good question, Andrew. And it's been interesting being in a sideways market for the last, call it 8 months or so. We had such a good experience last, coming out of the spring last year in the summer. The blip was fairly short, unexpectedly short in terms of where the real enthusiasm in the precious metal space was. But I'm starting to get that feeling again, very similar to this time last year, where things aren't really adding up across the board, and PMs are becoming, I guess the shine's starting to come back on, and I'm not sure that's starting to translate yet into the junior precious metal space. Not like you would expect with the rally that we've had with gold, but maybe that's just creating an opportunity for shareholders that are, early to the game or early to the next leg up, as they might see it.
It's been a blessing for people who want to continue to deploy capital in the sector, where we've seen other areas like copper starting to heat up, uranium equities heat up. The price is lagging, but that will sort itself out, no problem. Coal, oil, these sectors are starting to heat up quite well, steel. So it'll be interesting to see how things go here, but definitely gold seems to be given a pretty good extra time window for us to continue to position here. I'd certainly agree that it will move and surpass the highs that were set last year. And you're right, it's been about a year since things have started to take off. So we'll see what happens next. So you're probably new to most of our audience. Talk about your past experience in this sector and why you went ahead and got involved in this particular venture with Core Mining.
Well, the reality is Core Mining is my first kick at the can in both the precious metal space and also in the public markets. I'm a geological engineer. I've been in the mining space for just over 20 years now, but mostly in the private sector, in the aggregates and construction materials business, as well as working for multinationals like Lafarge. But as in any business and the cyclicality of it, I just saw the opportunity in, call it 2015, 2016, to be really an active participant in what I thought was going to be a banner opportunity in the precious metal space. And so I looked at that as where am I going to find my entry point? Where is going to be the best opportunity to have great exposure to precious metals? And that's how I started Core and find myself today.
Yeah, Jim, that's great. And you're you're the founder out there and a substantial shareholder of the company. Scott Treblecock's been on the show in the past. He's your CEO. Do you get along with Scott, and why is he important?
Scott's fantastic. Scott is, he's a true CEO and true manager. He runs the company extremely well. He manages our team very well, and he fills the gaps in that I don't have. I'm a entrepreneur. I seek projects, I seek opportunities, and I think about the strategy behind the business. And having Scott, being so dynamic, he's a great presenter. He really resonates with shareholders and investors. And it's just a great fit. So as a byproduct, we've created a really good team around Scott.
Jim, talk about how you guys met, because he was over at Nevsun for a time, leading things over there, prior to the Lundin Zygene bid for that company. I don't remember the year, but it was a couple of years ago now. How'd you guys hook up, and what was the thought process when California came on your radar?
Yeah, so I first met Scott in 2019, and he had just come out of Nevsun. The transaction had closed. Scott was taking a breather because obviously, to your point, it was a pretty long process and there were a lot of moving parts. But that was a big win for Scott and his organization. And Scott, coming out of the base metal space at the time, was looking in 2019 at the precious metal space as the time to get in. There was the writing on the wall in 2019. Some saw it, some didn't. But as of June 2019, what really started as the great sort of real rally of where we are today began, and Scott stepped in right at that time. So I had the pleasure of meeting Scott in the spring of 2019. We hit it off very well, and we just came to an understanding that we would work well together and could grow Core to be what it is today and beyond.
Jim, recent news, the company announced an 8 million Canadian bought deal at 95 cents. How much runway will this give the company until the next potential capital raise? And what does the pro forma capital structure look like here?
Yeah, it's really good timing for this conversation, Andrew. We looked at where we are today, where we wanted to be in the next, call it 6 to 8 months, and we have a lot of news-driven, call it exploration activities over the next, call it 6 months on both of our projects in California. And we wanted to make sure that we were well capitalized going into that. So taking advantage of the window that we've had, this nice blip in the gold price, definitely some strong interest on the institution and even on active retail that are part of the existing Core story, to add to the treasury, to make sure that we're well funded to do some drilling this summer and fall. We started out the year with about $5 million in cash. This will add quite significantly to the treasury, but without too much dilution for shareholders. We're fortunate having spun out our Karus Gold assets earlier in the year. We have just 106 million shares out in Core at this time, so we're not adding a significant amount to the share registry. But ultimately, we're a tightly held company with management and Eric Sprott owning, I guess, collectively somewhere between 65 and 70% of the company. And so we just keep these financings tight, fairly closely held, and give us visibility on creating good news flow from what we think is the transformative part of Core, entering into areas that haven't been drilled in 25 years.
With the Karus transaction and the timing here, the Karus transaction took a fair bit of value, it appeared, when that happened earlier in the year. And this coincided, of course, with part of the low period in the sentiment for, gold equities at the time. What's your thoughts on, you guys doing this capital raise now versus, when the stock was, I think, north of 150 a couple of months back prior to this Karus transaction? And then the other part of that, and like your comments, is the Karus assets. Those assets seem to have collected a good value here. Not that they've IPO'd yet, but what's your thoughts on just the timing here and the value of Karus?
Well, with any spin out, you have to put a pin in your timing and plan for the best. And when we made the decision in the fall to do that, we were looking at what had transpired within our exploration assets in BC through the exploration season in 2020 and how we wanted to advance those assets in 2021. And we had some excellent exploration success on a very large land package in the Caribou. Some, incredible opportunity to continue to grow that asset, and it justified being its own company. And as a result, we were able to attract Andrew Kipe as the CEO of that spin out. We plan on taking that public here shortly, but it really cleans up the story on what Core versus Karus really is. And Core is a exploration and development company in the United States. Combined, we have nearly 4 million ounces of gold across M&I and inferred, mostly oxide within those deposits. Whereas the opportunity in British Columbia is large-scale regional exploration that we started last year with call it a seed drilling program. It bore a lot of fruit, and as a result, we're going to go full bore this year on that. And while we were going to be doing extensive exploration regionally and locally in California, we didn't want to mince those stories. So it was timely for us. And I think what's happened, despite the pullback in the share price, which it's happened across the board, it's really given us an opportunity to have shareholders get exposure to both stories as both stories build and develop going forward here.
Yeah, I think that's good, Jim. I appreciate you going through that and the timing and how you guys look at this. I think it does make sense in the long run. Maybe in the short term, maybe folks don't fully see it yet, but I think there's some good things to come from both companies. So on this bought deal, did management participate in this capital raise here? And then maybe you can speak to the key shareholders post-closing, and are there any new key shareholders coming in with this?
It's a little early for me to comment on some of that. I will say that we do have active insider and management participation on this. So that would include our management team, our board of directors, and I'm told that Eric Sprott is a decent sized participant in this financing as well. And so really it's a testament to the belief in what it is that we're doing. We'll know over the next little while who will be joining the sort of shareholder registry as we go, but we're pretty confident that the mix will be fitting with our current structure.
Very well. And Jim, can you just also cover where are you guys at as far as your current holdings? Can you maybe just speak to management there, and if you don't mind sharing maybe yourself from a cost basis in your shares?
Sure. So I think between Scott and I collectively, we hold close to 30 million shares of the 106 million shares outstanding. Eric Sprott would own approximately 27 or 28 million as well. Eric participated in every single financing the company has done as a public company as of August 2019. And two of the three prior to this bought deal, he did exclusively. So we've been active participants ourselves. We will be part of this, part of this bought deal. I think collectively management will have probably about 10% of the financing itself. And so, from a cost-based perspective, we are being diluted a little bit, but we see this as an averaging up for ourselves. And I think when Scott first came on board, he would have been buying stock in the 20 to 25 cent range, and now we're in the 95 cent to $1 range.
Certainly remember the days when it was down there, and it's good to see you guys, pay up here. I think that helps with investors out there that are looking at these types of things to understand, and that's always a good thing to see that happening. Okay, well, Imperial, new drill program is on the way. You guys are in permitting stages. This is a pretty important step for the company, and suspect as part of your capital raise here that a lot of this money is going to go into the drill bit here. Talk about when you expect those permits. How is that process going? When will it start? And what do you guys expect to expend on this campaign?
A very good question, Andrew. And that is an important part of, call it the next 6 months for the company. So we've been undertaking, ever since we acquired the Imperial project, we've been working methodically on advancing it. And fundamentally, one of the first aspects of that is we staked a large land package around Imperial, recognizing that historically there was a lot of interest in exploring that trend that connects 3 sizable deposits, being the Picacho mine, the Imperial project itself, and then the operating Mesquite mine, which is currently owned by Equinox Gold. We recognized that there was a pretty significant trend through there, wanted to make sure that we as a company had the opportunity to explore that in the future. And we've actually staked even recently more ground because we continue to find gold mineralization at surface, lots of alteration. And we recognize that these are big systems and the opportunity is very large for a company like us to find, frankly, assets or deposits that are similar size to Imperial and Mesquite along that same trend. So to your point, it's pretty important that we get out there and we start drilling. And we've recently updated the PEA that we came out with. So we came out with a PEA on Imperial last year with very robust economics. And that was the driver for us to say, okay, we have a pin in evaluation on the asset. While we're advancing that towards permitting to build the mine, let's permit for regional exploration and expansion drilling. So we've gone out, we've done a lot of legwork to work up our targets, both through geophysics, geochemistry, the good hard work in terms of environmental preparation, permitting prep, and then ultimately have recently signed an MOU with the Bureau of Land Management to go through the process to finalize permitting on that. So it is we expect the permitting process to take another, call it 4 months here on that, barring any changes. But with that opportunity, we'll see the drills turning, conceivably in Q3 here for the company on the Imperial project. And collectively on that project, we'd like to see a 10,000 meter initial campaign. And that 10,000 meter campaign would include both expansion drilling and verification drilling within the Imperial deposit, but also taking some of these blue sky targets that we've developed over the last, call it year to year and a half, and really shoot for some really high priority targets there.
Jim, any idea on what investors can expect on the cost for that program?
Drilling costs for a program like that are reasonably modest, actually. We're in great terrain, easily accessible. So we'd look at $250 US per meter, maybe up to $300 US per meter drilling cost all in. And so that would include our assays and our field crews and everything else. So look at that being approximately a $3 million program.
That sounds good, Jim. I appreciate that. So lots of topics here. I want to try to hammer through some of these and stay on Imperial for a moment, then we'll go to Long Valley. I think that's one of the things you guys have here is you have a development project that's either moving to pre-feasibility or even directly to feasibility study. Typically on development stories, there can be a drop in the share price to where there's some boredom from investors, but you guys are trying to supplement this with some exploration work that could get share price up and then allow you to potentially raise capital to continue to get through permitting here on the actual mine at Imperial. Talk about that thought process there to keep driving the share price higher, why this feasibility study takes place. Talk about that time frame, and then also you've got a pretty good, expertise on that side of things in permitting in California with Mark Leduc as part of your team. Talk about him and talk about the time frame and what you guys really think is reasonable here to actually proceed through final studies and how long it would take to actually get this thing permitted.
Yeah, very good question. And you're bang on with Mark Leduc. Mark Leduc came on board about 1.5 years ago now. He's been instrumental in driving the engineering and permitting environmental side of the company. He's built a strong team in Imperial County where the Imperial project is located. And there's a real focus on community engagement, the social side, given that mining is actually a pretty sizable business in that county. And the follow through on that is Mark's had an opportunity to do a deep dive into the data, the quality of the work that was done historically, which is very, very, very well done, and it lends the project to a very structured approach where we aren't just relying upon a permitting timeline. The Imperial project hasn't seen a drill bit since 1998, And so if you look at gold prices today versus back then, you look at the opportunities to use technologies for finding new deposits. This is a really untapped opportunity for us to run in parallel. And so as a result, Mark and his team are moving along with all the baseline and environmental work required to permit the mine. They have the engineering side of it pretty much completed. And so a lot of this stuff is plugins for a potential pre-feasibility or feasibility study, of which the lack of complexity of the Imperial project doesn't really dictate that we have to pull the trigger on that right away. Such strong and reasonable economics within our PEA. All the information that we continue to gather will help to supplement that future PFS, including this drill program that we're discussing. It'll just add more value. It'll add more information, and then that lends itself to expansion of the resource, which we want to make sure that we aren't just putting a pin in it and saying this is our project that we're going to permit. This is a growing plan. We hope to find considerably more resources, and we'll continue to explore while we're undertaking that permitting process. Then the permitting process itself, part and parcel with receiving our drilling permit, we'll be looking to submit our plan of operation for the mine plan itself. And from that point forward, we anticipate it'll be about a 2-year process on the permitting side. So we're looking at 2.5 years right now on permitting. Maybe that takes 3 years when you look at the supplemental permits that would be required. But given the location, the lack of complexity, we think with good work and good community engagement, we should be on track to sort of meet those objectives.
Jim, that sounds good. We follow Equinox Gold quite a bit here. It's a portfolio position at SmithWeekly. They're working on Castle Mountain. I know Mark's well in tune with these projects in this area, and the timing sounds about right. The reality is with Imperial there, and maybe you can speak to this, that project is within, reaching distance from Mesquite. What's your thought process on that as far as, comment what you can? This Imperial deposit is within distance of these facilities that are existing, which may make the process an easier process to permit if you were Equinox. Now, I can't speak for them, but that's an interesting proposition. Is this your guys' intention? If there's no interest, and if you guys can't generate any interest, do you guys feel plenty comfortable with Mark and the permitting side for you guys just to go ahead and move this thing forward and, if needed, construct?
To sum it up, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to Mark and the Castle Mountain project. Mark was pretty instrumental part of the team for permitting that first phase at Castle Mountain. As you know, Castle did a restart or Equinox did a restart of Castle Mountain in the fall. Sounds like that's going incredibly well. They're working on their permits for phase 2 of that mining construction. And as a result, we have a pretty sizable team to draw upon that Mark's used in the past, with regards to consultants, engineering, legal. It makes for hitting the ground running on the permitting process, and also recognizing where some of the critical timeline elements could be in a process like that. So yeah, absolutely on that front, we've got a good team and we have a really good plan on that. The fact that the Mesquite mine is very proximal, I think it's fantastic for permitting, recognizing that Mesquite is frankly nearing the end of its life. Equinox is doing an incredible job, extracting additional value out of it, and gold price is really helping that as well. But the reality is, there is an end to the mine life of Mesquite, and there are a lot of very high-paying jobs as a result of the mining operation there. They've done a very good job on the environmental and community engagement side, and so those are all beneficial spin-offs for Core as a company moving towards permitting something where you really do want that community support. And so I think it's a great go it alone strategy. It's something that, it's definitely feasible for our team to accomplish. And, to answer your question on, the synergistic side, while Imperial has excellent economics that I think will attract, a number of suitors down the road when it comes to a mid-tier that would look to produce, run-of-mine oxide heap leach gold. Truly, there are synergies with a company like Equinox in that, they are a brownfield project, so they have infrastructure, they have team, there's equipment there. There's a lot of useful synergies that would add value to a company like Equinox, but it doesn't require, Imperial doesn't require those synergies to be successful. It's just a big value add for a company like Equinox should they go down that road.
Yeah, it's hard not to see that, assuming the process is done well on your guys' side, execution's good with community work. It seems like a fantastic location to add a mine right next to the other one. Compare for a moment the existing grades at Mesquite and talk about, your guys' grades that you guys are turning out. The mine plan would essentially be the same, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe just do a compare and contrast here. And also, can you speak to what your guys' rough expectations are? You guys already have some good resources already delineated, but talk about maybe the potential here, because if this thing gets much more big, it's got to attract some people.
Yeah, and I'll answer that as best I can in terms of compare and contrast. As I mentioned with respect to Equinox, being near end of life, you start getting more into transition ores, maybe a little bit more complexities in terms of moving materials, waste handling, opening up new areas. So maybe, overall that can drive up some of your costs while you have, overall declining recoveries or declining grade. So I can't recall off the top of my head what the reserve grade at Castle is, at Mesquite is at the moment. I'm guessing it's somewhere around 0.35 grams per ton, whereas Imperial is north of half a gram per ton. Much like Mesquite, we don't have to crush the ore to extract gold. It's purely run of mine. So the infrastructure costs, capital costs are quite low. And because the strip is quite reasonable there, I think it's just over 2.5 to 1, with a sizable piece coming right to surface. It really sets itself up for, relatively low pre-strip costs, relatively low operating costs. So as a result, I think from an economics perspective and an operating cost perspective, Imperial should be quite superior to the currently operating Mesquite mine, just in terms of grades, higher overall recovery because it's oxide, and then because we're greenfield, we're starting fresh. The complexities of where to put ore or where to put waste, are well laid out based on the mine plan. That's sort of my best kick at the can on the compare and contrast on the two. Really in terms of upsizing these deposits, the structure itself that connects Mesquite and Imperial is mostly undercover. So it's under an alluvial cover. There's, the Imperial project comes to surface, like I mentioned, so there's outcrop that's been, explored. Ultimately, that's how Imperial was found. Mesquite was found much the same way. And so if you look at the two, you draw a straight line, there's a pretty sizable regional structure that connects the two of them, which we've also interpreted from geophysics. All that rests underneath this thin veneer of alluvial cover. So our opportunity is to find, call it the string of pearls along that structure, where we can find more of the same. And again, given there's 17 kilometers between the two, we think we have a lot of targets that can be generated as we get started out there on exploration drilling.
It is an interesting project, and I can't see how eyes continue to watch what's going on there. And as this market progresses, if you guys continue to to regain share price and market cap goes up, there's got to be some thought process on what this is worth and when should we pull the trigger on this company before valuations get out of hand. Talk about just the community here for a moment. Pretty low risk here. I know the community work's important. The ESG factor is important at this point in the market. Talk about what you guys are doing at this stage, what you guys intend to do as you grow the company's size and can support more community work. It's a remote area. LA County landfill, if I'm not mistaken, is right there. Talk about the area, talk about the community and some of your initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to note that Imperial County is one of the poorest counties in California. It's very much a blue collar county. It focuses on farming. It requires a lot of sort of labor intensive work to be productive. And so, as a result, it's important to make sure that we're aware of that in that community. And you're bang on the ESG side. As a company, we've brought on good people internally, both locally and at our head office here in Vancouver, who have had that experience in the past and are cognizant of the impacts of what mining can be, both socially, economically, and environmentally. And so it's foremost on our mind, and as a result, we've been leading with that community engagement pretty critically. The last thing you want to have happen in a situation where we are fairly remote, there's not a lot of community directly around where the Imperial project is itself. We want to make sure that the community is aware of our plans well ahead of time. That we've actively sought input from the community itself, and that we make sure that everyone that wants to be heard will be heard in and through the entire process. So you're correct in that, yeah, it is fairly remote. You have an operating mine like Mesquite. You have 3 or 4 other mines that have operated historically, whether it was Tumco, American Girl, Picasso. They're all within the, call it 15-kilometer radius around Imperial, with nary a resident within that same circle. But at the same time, we don't want to underestimate sort of the impact just cumulatively. So we're always thinking about what's going on in the region, what is the topic of conversation, and how can we be engaged as a company on that going forward.
Appreciate the thoughts on that there, and certainly a remote area of California, but nonetheless services the state really well, and also obviously tax revenues, et cetera. It's got to be important for a state such as California, especially as they enter with some of their other challenges within the state from a cost perspective. How about Long Valley? Why don't you give us an update there? Any plans this year up there on that project? What's the thoughts on Long Valley here?
I personally think Long Valley is a bit of a sleeper, and as a result, it'll be the first place that sees a drill bit, most likely within core, within the core spin out as it is. And the reason I say that is, much like Imperial, we've gone and significantly added to our land package at Long Valley. We started at 1,800 acres when we acquired the project, and I believe we're well over 12,000 acres now. And why that's fundamentally important on Long Valley is a very large epithermal system that is fully intact. So it's quite a young system. Technically speaking, I think it's about 700,000 years old, which is incredibly young. It takes place within an active caldera. So you have active geothermal waters. You have all the right makings for a decent size epithermal deposit. But what's so intriguing about that one is that A, has a large footprint. So the size of the deposit footprint wise is one of the larger that I've seen that's epithermal style. But historic drilling has only taken place on average, call it 80 to 85 meters below surface. So to have a epithermal disseminated gold and silver deposit effectively right at surface with little to no drilling below sort of those initial drill programs that were focused on that upper oxide resource. I think the upside opportunity there is massive, and we'll be targeting very high grade potential structures that would be, quote unquote, feeder structures for the deposit. The boiling zone of an epithermal deposit is where you can have these buildups of high grade or bonanza grade gold. And that's what we would be targeting at Long Valley, in addition to actively expanding that footprint and the size of the oxide deposit, because frankly, it's still pretty much wide open in every direction there.
On this one here, talk about what you guys think is where would you prefer to see some of this delineation of resources on this project, as far as, getting that number up? And then also, how does this slot in? Are you guys going to advance this one right along with Imperial? Will it depend on what happens through the drill bit? What happens here, because you guys already have a PEA out on this one as well. So talk about your plans overall there.
So, well, firstly, we're very fortunate to have PEAs on both of these projects, because, again, that puts a pin in the value of the assets that we have. Goes to show the strength and economics of these types of oxide deposits as they sit in the western basin. And so, as a result, we have the luxury of being able to expand on something that was done historically at lower gold prices. And if you look at our approach on both Imperial and on Long Valley, it is everything we want to do would be cumulative. So while we're advancing Imperial and frankly exploring for new deposits at Imperial, we want to be doing the same thing at Long Valley, but a couple of years behind in terms of state of advancement. So while we're permitting at Imperial, we're going to be focused with the drill bit at Long Valley, and that'll include the boots on the ground geochemical and reconnaissance work of all the new ground that we've staked. There's lots of potential structure there, but as we see it surface just within the footprint of the known epithermal, there's still a ton of expansion at surface of the oxide. And so that can be a nice focus to kind of build up, what right now is classified as a 100,000 ounce per year producer, something that can add more size and scale potentially to that. But while we're doing that, we're going to take some big shots for high grade. And what we really love about Long Valley, and what I really love about Long Valley, is that to me is the absolute true blue sky of Long Valley. Is if you can hit some structurally, we have kilometers of untested structure to that we can follow up on and we can drill. And if we have some success with the drill bit on our first go around here on those structures, it's open season on more drilling campaigns on that type of work.
Jim, I just had a chance to spend a little bit of time on the PEAs again since Scott and I spoke. You guys have the potential here to improve the production profiles. You're within striking distance at Imperial of certainly being able to get to 200,000 ounces of gold a year, while possibly keeping CapEx's sub 200 million, which I think is, for a mid-tier, the proper mid-tier, it's a no-brainer. What's your thoughts on, where you guys expect to see these profiles? Where would you prefer them? Because it seems to me that depending on the size of the company that's looking at these, they're looking at projects that are generally closer to 200,000 ounces plus. Do you think you can reach those goals?
Yeah, that's a bit of a double-edged sword. In most cases, the larger you want to grow your production profile, the more your capital costs are going to go up. We're fortunate that the more we find at surface, the more that we can expand that throughput and overall increase that annual production rate. You hit the nail on the head in terms of size expectations, but at the same time, I think that threshold of 100 to 150 is still pretty reasonable for something that is relatively low risk and relatively low capital cost. It's a different story if you're building pretty substantial underground infrastructure, or you have complex ore mineralogy. So what I think is everything from this point forward is going to be gravy. And because there hasn't been systematic exploration in a long time, it's up to us to be able to increase that profile. And so I really look forward to having that opportunity. I know it's going to be there. And when you look at, the greater Imperial project, a lot of our ground is within, call it conveying or trucking distance of where we intend to build that operation. And so if you start looking 5, 10, 15 years down the road of what that Imperial project could look like, it could look very different than what it looks like today. And so, ultimately we're going to submit a plan based on, the information that we have. But the future opportunities are, they'll be a result of the hard work that we do today on the exploration front on both of those projects. And and so that's where, as a company, we get to be able to do kind of both sides. We get to advance something that we want to build, and also we have the ability to go out and continue to be successful with the drill bit and be kind to shareholders in terms of a valuation proposal.
Just back to Long Valley real quick before we wrap up. What challenges do you see up at Long Valley? Do you see that community work or permitting is a challenge up there in Long Valley? It's certainly, to me, more of a challenge up there than it would be at Imperial, given the differences. What do you see, for challenges at Long Valley going forward on the permitting ESG side, if any?
I think when it comes to Long Valley, we have to be aware that we haven't really had an opportunity to do that community engagement, comprehensive community engagement and ESG work. We have been very focused on Imperial as we move towards that plan of operation, so we can work towards permitting Imperial. And so it's now on us to go and really start that process in and around Long Valley. Certainly Long Valley is more of a recreational, greater area than Imperial would be. And so we just have to, again, like we have in Imperial, really get to the underbelly of the community, what's important to the community, and how we can fit in as a good corporate citizen. It's going to take a lot of work, frankly, but it's stuff that we like to do as a company. And with these projects, we're not short-sighted in terms of what the expected timelines are going to be, or how long we're going to be involved. So making sure we don't have any missteps is really important to us. And if we feel that there's going to be more sensitivities, then we just have to work that much harder, spend more time on it. But I think ultimately at Long Valley, finding good high-grade deposit there would be very good from a long-term mineability, I guess, of the asset. Looking at how long you can have a positive economic benefit in a region is quite important. It's not our plan to be a one and done. So anything we can do to continue advance the exploration front to show what the potential is will help us garner more support and obviously more capital that we can attribute towards good engagement and good work there.
Yep. One of the first steps on that front is always listening to what the community wants first and foremost, and that's probably step number one. And of course, as you know, it's not good to get a nice gold deposit that never sees the light of the day. So your point about mineability is so important in this market and is often overlooked because a lot of these deposits sometimes they get delineated and they stay in the ground. And it's always good to have a project that can finally see the light of day, if you will. Well, potential investors who are on the sidelines listening here, the market cap of the company stands about 96 million Canadian. What would you say to them at this stage and at current price levels?
Well, certainly at current price levels, we're about as cheap as you can get relative to our peers. If you look at our peer group, they're trading at, I would say, multiples on a relative basis, be it net asset value, be it gold in the ground, whatever metric you want to use. So I think that builds a very, very strong, base valuation for what an entry point for core would be. The catalyst that we have coming up with the company can't be underestimated. If you look at, putting the drill into Imperial and into Long Valley over the next 6 months, much like what we did in the Caribou, which hadn't seen a drill bit for, well over a decade. We look at these opportunities where our team is very strong on the exploration front, and we'll be able to create a lot of value. And so once the train leaves the station, I guess is a good way to describe it, is, we're so tightly held that if we get those catalysts running, it'll be a great story for shareholders to support. And no time like the present when it comes to, we're in a kind of an inflection point, I believe, in gold price. And if gold starts to run here, stories like core, much like they did last summer, will just be just taking off in that type of environment.
Jim, humor the audience for just a moment. Just give us a few peers for comparative purposes. Any names as far as the peers you want to mention?
A good example would be Integra Resources in Idaho. They track as a pretty good peer in terms of stage and size to core. Corvus would be another one in Nevada. I believe Corvus just announced a strategic sort of debt vehicle with their neighbor, so they may not last very long. Gold Standard would be another one in terms of size and scale and stage. So we have a limited peer group because I believe in this market they're going to be knocked off pretty quickly. Particularly if things start to run and mid-tiers that are cashed up start looking for that next acquisition. There's probably only a handful in the United States that would fit the bill. And there's a lot more mid-tiers looking for projects than there are juniors with projects of this scale looking for a home.
Yeah, I'll add Liberty to that list as well. But you're absolutely right. You better get on with it now while you have the market conditions and before the valuations get out of hand, and they will. It always makes sense to get this M&A going sooner rather than later. We know companies are going to ultimately pay up a lot, Jim, at the end of this. But good points. Interesting on the peers. Well, let's leave it there. Best way for the audience to reach out to the company?
I'd say the best thing to do is go to our website, coremining.com. On the website, there's lots of good information on each of our projects, on our team, capital structure, but also contact information for the company. It'll allow you to make contact, get on our active mailing list, download our presentation, and then we'd be happy to respond to any inquiries or questions that your listeners may have going forward.
Jim, thanks for taking the time to introduce and also update on the company. Good luck over at Core, and stay well out there.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you for the time today. Appreciate it.